I read one book and they tell me the key to everything is, getting really good at operation. Another is you just need to get really great at content marketing. And another is you just need to get really good at hiring. And another says if you just had a really clear strategy, that would solve all your problems.
What's the number one secret to being able to what is it, elite execution system, and then what's the number one secret that you found to help people to implement this?
Thank you. So I wrote a book called Building an Elite Organization, which is on the elite execution system, which is the operating system that we run our organization on, and that we have now had the pleasure over the last number of years helping implement and help a lot of other companies run their organizations on. And I like to think about it as it's putting discipline into a business, and often entrepreneurs think of discipline as a 4-letter word because it feels like work, which is a 4-letter word, and it is work, right? Putting discipline in organization when the market is, if you're in real estate as an example, like we are, when the market's on fire and property values are just soaring, it doesn't feel like discipline's all that important, right? You don't have to do that great of a job to still make money, but when things get difficult, it becomes really really critical and important. So the way I think about it fundamentally is every organization has 4, I like to call them quadrants: strategy, people, operations, and acceleration. And in order to get sustained growth, time over time, year over year, month over month, you need those 4 quadrants to all grow together, part of one plan that's unified. And that's how we've been able to grow, 60+% a year, every year for 17 years, 10 years in a row as one of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in America. Really, really consistent growth. That really consistent growth has come from running the organization a part of one plan. We use a tool we call the Compass. And anybody listening to your podcast here is probably like you and I. They're people out wanting to learn and want to grow and seeking knowledge and information. And what I found in my career is I'm always consuming all these books and all this knowledge. And I read one book and they tell me the key to everything is, getting really good at operation. Another is you just need to get really great at content marketing. And another is you just need to get really good at hiring. And another says if you just had a really clear strategy, that would solve all your problems. But the reality is if you get really great at any one area of the organization and don't focus on the others, you end up with a business, maybe it grows fast, but you can't handle that growth and you go down. And that's why most companies go up and they go down, and they go up and they down, and they struggle to have consistent growth, right? Consistent high growth and high profits. So the biggest way that we've been able to do this effectively, this is the center of it. So we say our secret weapon at DLP is the 20-mile march. And we always say, kind of half joking. So when somebody says, Don, what's been the key to your success? I always say there's 2 things. Number one, we have the very best people, which is leadership, is where that starts, which we get into. And then we have a secret weapon, which is the 20-mile march. And the 20-mile march, that term, it's one of our core values. And that term comes from the great Jim Collins. And in Jim Collins' best book ever, in my humble opinion, called Great by Choice, he sets out to understand, all right, his first book, his most famous one called Good to Great, he sets out to say, all right, and he compares, the Southwest Airlines, the Pacific Southwest, and he goes and studies all these great companies. In the second book, he says, all right, well, if you wanted to run a great company, what do you need to do, right? So he goes out and studies for 4 years. What do all the great companies have in common? They're all very different. What do they have in common? And the short story is he includes that all the great companies have one thing in common: the 20-mile march. And the concept of the 20-mile march comes from the parable of it is these 2 expedition crews set out to go to the South Pole. Nobody ever been to the South Pole before. Similar experience, similar background, similar resources. And the one crew got there 31 days before the other expedition crew. And the group who got there 31 days later, not only did they get there and find out they lost and they weren't the first ever to make it, but they also all died on the way back. And the main message, the main thing that separated these 2 groups was the group who got there first, they would literally march 20 miles, no matter what the weather conditions were, whether it was -20 and the wind at their face or 50 and the wind at their back, they would force themselves to go 20 miles. So on really terrible days, it would be very hard to push themselves to go forward. But on really beautiful days, they would modulate their effort and not let themselves get over, exhausted and go 40 or 50 miles. So every day, it didn't matter what happened around them, they marched their 20 miles. The group who died, they would go 40 or 50 miles on good days, and they would stay in their tent and wait and whine on bad days, right? So they let the exterior conditions, the outside world, dictate what they do every day. And that's what most organizations do. When things are really great and the economy is wonderful and so forth, then we'll spend lots of money and we'll go and we'll hire lots of people. And then as soon as things get a little bit difficult, right, now we want to hide under our table, and we want to stop marketing, and we want to cut back, and we want to lay people off, and we get afraid. We let what happens around us, economy, competition, et cetera, dictate what we do. And the mindset of 20 Mile March is figuring out what we do as an organization, but also what does each person in the organization do that produces their results, and making sure that no matter what whirlwind's going around us, we each focus our activities on the things that generate results. And we do that day in and day out, week in and week out, month in, month out, et cetera. So when I tell people this story when I welcome all our new employees and I share this story, we play a little video, I always tell people, what do you think the message is to the story? And somebody always says, well, it's like the tortoise and the hare, slow and steady wins the race. And people always say, well, it's about consistency, and it's about doing things again and again, and not giving up, and I always tell people, they get a lot of it, but the tortoise and the hare is actually right in the consistency part, but it's not slow and steady, right? So I wear a Fitbit, an Oura ring, and so I track my steps, my activity, right? And I don't many days go 20 miles in a day, right? Most days I don't hit 20 miles, right? So it's not called a 1 mile walk or a 3 mile skip. It's a 20 mile march. And it's not about doing it at the beginning of the year, the end of the year, or when you feel like it. It's about doing it every single day that becomes a discipline. And the pace of going 20 miles every day feels the normal. And when you can get the whole organization, 300 plus people doing that, it's amazing the kind of consistent results you get. And that's part of our DNA. It's part of our culture here at DLP.
All right, let me try to unpack that. Wow, so much wisdom there, right? So the number one secret that you found to stay consistent is first of all uniting, kind of these four quadrants, right? And uniting and not just focusing on one or being against or the other, and then coupling that with amazing people, right, to help that. But then there's the secret of the 20 mile march where you're not letting the exterior dictate what you're going to do every day, like your convictions, your values, your practices, your habits, and having that mindset and having those disciplines in place and getting everyone to be doing that has been the number one secret to your growth. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, very, very much fair summary.